Hi, I'm Brian Kellerman, the co-founder and Chief Quality and Food Safety Officer at Kellerman Consulting, and you are watching our series for internal audits. In our previous episodes in this series, we have introduced the concept of internal audits and the actions required to prepare before the audit occurs. In this episode, we are going to discuss how to perform the internal audit and best approaches during the audit to help achieve a successful outcome. We should note here that a successful outcome of an internal audit does not mean that the organization passes the audit, but rather that the audit accurately reflects the state of the organization at the time of the audit. Once we have selected the correct internal auditor or internal audit team, set our audit schedule, and determined a method that is appropriate, we are ready to actually perform the audit. Get those flashlights and notepads ready. In order to understand how to properly perform the audit, we are going to need to examine appropriate audit behavior, record keeping, and examination techniques. As part of the scheduling process we discussed in our previous episode, all of the people involved in the internal audit need to be aware that the audit is happening in advance. Communication about the upcoming audit should include a reminder for everyone involved to gather relevant information and prepare employees in order to help complete the audit efficiently. At this stage in performing the audit, it is most important that management or leadership involved takes the internal audit seriously and does everything in their power to demonstrate their intention to cooperate and fully participate in the process. If a person in leadership acts as though the audit is not important or is hostile towards those performing the internal audit, they tremendously reduce the effectiveness of the audit and can seriously damage the company's ability to conduct the audit. The auditor, who is the person or team performing the audit, along with the auditee, who is the person or group being audited, should understand what is being audited and what time period of records is under review. This is called the scope of the audit. Where the internal audit has been properly communicated in advance, an unexpected absence of an employee from that area should not result in postponing the audit. If a person calls off or leaves suddenly during the audit, the focus of the audit should shift to an assessment of the preparedness of the department in that person's absence. In the event information is not available in that person's absence, we consider that a gap in the quality or safety management system, and that is reflected in the audit report. Organizations that have a large staff and multiple departments to audit will often bring in an independent internal audit team to perform the audit. Alternatively, in small companies, a manager may be tasked with auditing other departments of people they work very closely with. Ideally, any pre-existing relationship of those involved in the audit won't affect the internal audit. But we should consider if there is a possibility that coworkers have too comfortable a relationship to effectively perform the audit. Sticking to the audit checklist or list of questions is important to having an effective and efficient audit. Depending on who is performing the audit, who is being audited, and the circumstances of the area of operations at the time of the audit, an audit could be friendly, contentious, argumentative, or all of the above. For example, if there have been multiple shipping errors leading up to the auditor needs to carefully interview the shipping manager and employees to identify other potential errors, as well as practices that can be changed to prevent future errors. Under that particular scenario, we can expect the shipping department employees to be defensive and possibly non-cooperative during the audit. The auditor should be anticipating that and must be prepared to act accordingly. It's important to remember the integrity of the audit depends on sticking to the schedule as much as possible and preventing distractions. As part of maintaining audit integrity, phones, tablets, internet browsers, and other distractions should be silenced or even turned off during the audit. A good way to think of the internal audit is as a master verification action. What this means is that the internal audit is a facility's chance to review all of the monitoring actions that are supposed to be performed as part of the safety or quality program. To do so, the auditor or audit team needs to ask the person or group being audited for the correct records and written information appropriate to the audit. With our audit checklist or prepared questions, we need to document if the area under audit either conforms or does not conform to organizational requirements. Wherever we find a nonconformance response, we need to fully document that so that we can determine the corrective action after the audit has concluded. Here, a nonconformance is a lack of records, the incorrect information recorded, or records that demonstrate the wrong action occurred. Presentation of the incorrect records does not need to be treated as a nonconformance if the person or group being audited can promptly present the correct information during the audit or immediately afterwards. As long as we are roughly sticking to the questions or audit checklist, and as long as the note-taking is thoroughly documented during the internal audit, we will have a proper internal audit at the conclusion of the process. One of the most common concerns for people new to performing an internal audit is how to properly look for issues during the audit. So how do we know if we are successful in the examination? If we have set up our audit correctly and we are disciplined in sticking to the audit checklist or questions we have prepared, the rest should take care of itself. When an audit is on the right track, the major issues have a way of jumping out and making themselves obvious. Whether we find every error or nonconformance is not the ultimate point of the internal audit and does not need to be the measure of a successful audit. Instead, evaluating the completeness of the understanding of the system, as well as gauging the readiness of the auditees to provide documented evidence of the system is the end goal. As an internal auditor, it is important to remember to ask questions and leave plenty of time for the person to respond, no matter how awkward the silence may be. It is equally important not to answer for the auditee and not to minimize difficulty or conflict when there's an issue that is discovered. Just stay calm and respectful, remain insistent on the information required to address the audit subject, and properly document the interaction. The last thing to remember is auditing coworkers whom we have a close relationship with is best to avoid whenever possible. Internal auditing is not meant to be a contentious or difficult process by any means. However, personal relationships with coworkers can very easily compromise our ability to remain focused and objective and can result in a poorly performed audit or section of an audit. In our next episode, we'll look at corrective actions and preventive actions resulting from a successful internal audit, and how these CAPA actions are used in a larger organizational review of the quality and safety management system. For other episodes on internal auditing and free downloadable tools to help perform an internal audit, as well as other training videos, please visit the Kellerman Consulting website, and please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel or follow us on LinkedIn.